We'll record it to the cloud. All right. So welcome everybody. This is the Thursday Eden podcast with Chris Barnes, and I'm Dominic Thomas. For those of you who might not know me, so we're just figured we'd get something together here that would act as a kind of a way to give announcements to the community, stimulate discussion on various topics and aspects of what we're doing, and then each week we're looking to have a guest. So definitely, if you guys have any ideas on people who you think we might would be good guests, or if you're interested in coming on to the show with us here, please just send us a message in Telegram. So a couple announcements really at this point. I just posted in a couple of the channels, but the news for now is that we've got these 3 events. So Monday evenings is open mic, or at least evenings on the East Coast. Then we have this on Thursday, and then we have webinar sessions on Saturday. So I'm gonna let Chris tell you guys a little bit more about those different events.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, Monday we already had our first sort of kicked off soft launch of our open mic, which I think went quite well. We had probably 12 or so people participate. And really all it is, it's just an opportunity for anybody in the community, it's not restrictive, to jump on a live Zoom. We record it so we can play it back for other people who want to play it back for themselves, essentially. And we just go through the people who jump in, and they take a couple minutes to talk about themselves, why they love EOS, why they're interested in Eden, and kind of go from there. So it was actually quite a fun time. We had a crew that kind of hung around and just bantered back and forth, and it was really good discussion. So that'll be every Monday, and it's 2200 UTC to 2400 UTC. And then on Thursdays, Hello Thursday, we're going to be doing this time. So it's 2000 UTC to 2130 roughly. And this is basically a podcast where Dominic and I will do a little more, not scripted, but pre-planned, where we'll try to cover a particular topic, update the community with some things that are going on, and then look to have a guest on each week while we do these. So, and ideally the guests we'd like to pull from the community. So this is, because the whole point of this, right, is Eden to develop a sense of a community sense where we're trying to bond and get to know each other, as opposed to just Telegram chat. And then eventually we have these elections where people may not even really know each other. So if we can kind of in advance start to get to know each other, I think we're going to have a better result in the end in the election. Like, it'll be easier to get to consensus because we're all going to sort of know each other and know what we're about. So that's Thursday, and then on Saturdays we'll do from midnight UTC 000 UTC to 1:30 UTC. So it's later on the East Coast and in North America. We're going to do again another one of these, except it'll be more educational and deliberate, again with a sort of a topic. And we'll have special guests on as well who might do some topics and do a presentation of sorts. And again, it's all centered around Eden, EOS, and the community at large. And we'll try to run these as long as people care. I think we'll kind of keep doing them, right?
Right. Yeah. Let us know, suggestions too. We just, want to get some things going, and we figure we can just build off of them. If you guys have any different ideas, or, definitely just please let us know, because we're not here to bore you to death. So the other big announcement for this week is the trial election. So we've got our second trial election coming up, and we put some stuff out there, and I'll be posting more, but much bigger prize pool. We've got from Dan is going to kind of put up a pretty good prize pool for everyone. It's 2,000 EOS for the Satoshi. And then each of the board members, I think, was 100. I don't know, I should bring up my sheet. And then there's going to be 10 for the next layer. So that's going to be, so everybody gets 3 rounds, right? And so if you get elected in your first round group, there's a 10 EOS prize pool budget for you, if you will. And then it's the board's going to split 1,000. That's right. Yeah, I think he upped it to that. I'll get some more information out there, but the pool's definitely bigger. And
It's
then
bigger.
we're asking everybody to have a little skin in the game. Um, Han and I worked pretty hard to get a good group for the first election, and our minimum was 64 because that's the minimum amount to get our proper group size of a minimum of 4, and then have 16 groups. They can go to, first round goes to 16 groups, goes to 4 groups,
The math worked.
picks the final person, right? But we had over 150 people registered. We expected that these were pretty highly motivated people. So, but it was a little disappointing, I'll say. It was only about 44% showed up. So anyway, well, we learned a lot and got a lot of feedback from a lot of you people and that attended, and I really appreciate that. And we all had a really good time. So that was the most important thing. I think this first one really showed that this is a pretty good process. It's actually I think pretty engaging, entertaining, if you will. And I think everybody was pretty happy with kind of the way it went and the results we got. So, so far so good. But definitely you want to test it with a larger amount. I'm really trying to get a minimum of around 200 for this event. I'd like to, kind of my stretch goal is like 500. But really figured, a lot of that is going to depend on how the community grows over the next 5 weeks or so. And so that was one of the big motivations to get these various meetings together, gatherings over the course of the week, because driving membership at this point is what it's all about, and we want to get a lot of people engaged. The more the merrier in this instance. And we're seeing the community grow. I think I was just checking this. If you looked at it lately, Chris, oh, and I have it here. So we're at 66 active members and 6 pending invitations. It's the pending invitations that I'm a little disappointed in, but not necessarily in a bad way, but more on a wake-up call to say, I think we need more information out there. I'm getting feedback from people that they don't really even know if they can invite people yet, once they become members. So, obviously we're going to work on getting that info out there. And these events will be part of that. But this next election is a big deal. So I really hope, everybody will support us with that. Spread the word. It still can be non-Eden members because we want this to continue to be an opportunity for people that are wondering about the process or maybe on the fence about getting involved, to let them experience what's really at the heart of this, which is this kind of new consensus algorithm for governance. So anyway, that's really the big news for now. So, check us out in the various channels, Eden on EOS, the Eden election channel. And then those of you that are Eden members, that channel is growing too. So appreciate everyone for your support, everyone's support in this. And then, I think, the election, it speaks for itself. And I think, Chris, you've kind of had this interesting position as it was a trial election, right? It's not an official position, but at the same time, there was a consensus arrived. So it's interesting, right? How's that feel for you? Like, I think it's been interesting.
This is a small step in my quest to conquer the world. So I feel like I'm on the right path.
You're on the right track.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
No, it's total surprise. I mean, like
Tear
I
him
said,
down.
like I've said before, like in other chances I've had a chance to be interviewed, it was the day before that I put up that post to look for projects. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to do. I wanted to play the game, but there was no big plan. And I find it's interesting now that there's going to be money at various layers, because now for everybody who goes into this, in that first layer, if you almost need to have you have to have answers to the question, okay, what are you going to do if you only win 10 EOS? What are you going to do with that? You need to have an answer to that question, or you should. Okay, then what are you going to do if you get to like just the board, but you don't win? Because that's 100 EOS. What are you going to do with 100 EOS? And then it's like, okay, I got to have an answer to that now. And then what are you going to do if you win the 1,000, the 2,000, whatever it ends up being for the Satoshi, right? And it's like, so you need to have a lot more answers. Otherwise, it's like, I only need 10 EOS for what I want to do. Okay, well that makes it easy. But if you have like this big vision and you want to win because you have a use for those funds, it's like, okay, what happens if you don't win? what are you going to do with those funds? Because it's not going to be enough to accomplish that goal that you're setting out to do, but you're still going to end up with funds. So what are you going to do with it? And I
Yeah.
think it adds depth. Like you got to really kind of plan and maybe, yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out. It'll be pretty interesting if
No,
you
I
how
think
people.
that's an important evolution, right? Because we know that that's where we want to go. And as we kind of achieve some of the funding initiatives that we hope are going to come through, these first rounds will be substantial, right? They won't be 10 EOS. I mean, we were projected, for example, with the RAM fees when we were looking at that, and this was months ago, it was something like 4 million, I think. And the way it would have worked out, I mean, even first round wins were like $12,000 budget or something, right? So that was going to be out of 1,000 people. We were projecting with 1,000 people, 100 people would have $12,000, right, to work with.
Yeah,
That's awesome,
90.
right? That's still, you can do a lot with that,
Yeah.
and then the next layer was 250,000, and Satoshi was, I think, 2.5 million, in a triumvirate, right? Because really, we got Satoshi right now because of the small number, but I wonder, if people haven't read the book or remember some of the early discussions, but when we get to that layer, it's not just one person, right? It's really a multi-sig arrangement called the triumvirate, or maybe we'll rename that now. I don't know. But so yes, and this is a practice for that, so we're adding that on. That's a different element. So it will change the dynamic.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh yeah, and it's and like the entertainment value. Like I watched those like that our first election. I've watched every video, and some of them I've watched twice because it was neat to hear. Just and I don't know, it's something about it that's like it's kind of fun to watch. Like it's very it's like true reality TV. You know that reality TV is like not really real. It's fairly scripted.
Right.
This is
Right.
this is true reality TV. And imagine how intense and fun that's going to be. Fun when there's like big money, hundreds of grand.
Mm,
If you're at the line between 10 grand and 100 grand, like, are people going to be like, no, I'm not going to vote. I don't care. Like how stubborn are some of us going to become
right.
maybe in
Sure.
that situation where it's like, fine, no one wins. I'm not
Yeah.
changing it, right? I think it's going to be so fun to watch, it's going to be a gold mine for content. Like guys like Felix Ruiz, who's putting together content, and like
Mhm.
this is going to be mineable for like just to pick out some pieces and some
That's true.
choice interactions and narrate it all. I
Eden
think,
election mashups.
yeah, oh yeah, totally.
Highlights, lowlights. Oh no.
It'll be there. I think it's going to
We're
happen,
gonna see
and
like
there's going to
rage quits, like God damn my body.
right, yeah. Well, yeah, and there's going to be interest. I mean, it's
People
one.
just tossing their stuff and closing their laptop.
Yeah. The true personalities. We're all being really nice right now, or everyone's trying to get
Yeah.
along, and then really we'll see when it comes down to it.
Well, that's a good point though, because I think something that maybe I was a little naive at the time, or wishful thinking, but we saw that change with EOS mainnet in my mind, and I think a lot of people commented on this, that the atmosphere prior to launch was very much kind of kumbaya, and everybody's around the campfire and everybody's rooting for each other, and there was this real level of optimism. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, this is a blood sport. This is the difference between me getting paid, 700 EOS a day at,
Right.
I think EOS was around like, I don't know, maybe $10 at the time or something. It was a lot of money, right? It was hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, I believe, if you were in like a top 5 position. So, wow, did it change? And it was unfortunate, because I think to some degree the prize pool and the way it was designed, where if you're out of the top 21, it was such a drop off.
Yeah, that cliff.
And that was rough, right? Because that really, you couldn't sustain your team at the way in which people were competing at the time, right? Which was also that the consensus was you'd get more votes based on your contribution to the community. Are you building software? Are you running marketing events? How are you kind of being of service to the community? What's your value, right? And then of course we all know the rest of the history and how things turned. But that's a concern here, right? Like, can we maintain a level of camaraderie in the end, knowing that it's not a zero-sum game?
That's right.
Which would be different here.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some hurt feelings, and there's going to be some people who are going to feel like they should have moved forward. Like that's going to happen. And but in the end, yes, some people aren't going to get the money they want. But those who do get it, surely, if they've made it to the end and they're actually voted into a good position and they have some funds, they're there because they're building something good. So.
Hmm.
And it won't be the last time. That's the other thing. Like this isn't a first. There's not just one opportunity. There'll be
Right.
multiple chances. So if you don't get in
Right.
the first time, well, your ideas were heard and you could refine maybe why you didn't get selected or whatever
Hmm.
reason. Maybe it's just bad matchups because you ended up with Dan and so you weren't winning,
Sure.
right? But and even then, you never know. Maybe Dan will surprise us. Maybe he'll be in a
I'm
group
not voting
and
for Dan.
but maybe
Who's
he'll
Dan?
he'll vote for somebody else. Like that's
That
the other
Dan
thing.
guy.
Like
Huh.
the OGs and the superstars, they may change their mind and be like, actually, your idea is really awesome, and you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for you. Like that's
Mhm.
possible. And it's so it'll
I
be
think
neat
it's
to see
very
how it plays
possible.
out.
And I think we even saw at what was really kind of a very small prize pool, and a small amount of people. There were already compromises along the way, though, too, right? Or let's say promises made to say, well,
Sure.
listen, I like what you're doing, and I'll I'll give a little of that, and it's going to have to be on word, but Eden's going to be about reputation, and
Yep.
everything's going to be public. So frankly, if you tell people in a group, it's going to be there for everybody to see. Hey, Chris, if you vote for me, I'll give you 1,000 EOS for that project. And then I get, elected. I don't do that. Forget it. You probably can pretty much kiss getting elected ever again goodbye. Right.
You would hope. I mean, this is what I always I like to say that this solves for trust, and like so you would I would hope I surely hope that if someone breaks trust, that then becomes something that is very difficult to come back from, right?
And I
It's
think it will be, depending, like anything, right?
yeah,
Was it a minor offense or a
right,
major? But I see that. And I also see that, will evolve. I can see things like, everybody getting elected to level one. If there's a real common cause that the bulk of people are in agreement needs some funding, I could see everybody saying like, well, if you elect me level one, I'm going to be a part of the Eden funding treaty for gray mass, say, or whatever, and I'm going to commit to that 5% donation or whatever, right? Like you're going to see campaigns, I think, that also run to
yeah,
multiple
yeah,
people, right?
yeah,
That will be part of convincing someone, right, in your group. That might be the only one they care about. They could be in your group and say, I just really want to see this happen. And if you're not for it, I'm really going to think twice about voting for the other person who's saying they will contribute to that or whatever. So
hmm
I think the funding definitely is going to get spread out.
yeah.
At face value, it looks like it's just going to be these small group of people. But I don't think you're going to consistently find yourself in that role if you're not kind of spreading things around in a way that works. But
Yeah,
you never know. That's the
yeah.
experiment, right?
It is an experiment. It's a super awesome experiment, though. I mean, and of all the things to experiment with such great implications, like the backdrop of the globe here, like
Oh God.
we're playing with EOS, we're gonna make this work. But man, like if we can get this to work and it works well and consistently, and we can look back 2 years later and have never really had any big bad actors really have success, and it's amazing where this might be able to go. It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're already adapting. One of the things that came from the first trial was, what happens if we found smaller groups seem to work, and I
yeah,
think for the most part we're going to try to stay there. I don't see us going above 6 most likely, because we need that balance between, we don't want an election to take 16 hours for people who go through all the rounds, for example, right? um, that would be too much, right? The idea is that you can get this done as a regular, say, working person who, for round one, really need about maybe an hour and a half put aside, an hour and 15 minutes, and you can be heard, you can contribute, your vote can count. And
yeah,
then from there, at most, it's a 4.5 hour commitment for the final four or maybe 5 or 6 people, depending on how many people are in the election. So it's reasonable. But we're already going to be coming up with a way that, as you sign up for this one, you're going to designate whether you want to be put forward as a candidate or not. and then we're going to randomize those folks, but average them out. So let's say if we had 48 people, just make a round number, and 16 groups, it would be 3 people randomized who want to be elected, and then everybody else is saying, I'm here to vote, support, decide. I want to be one of the decision makers on who moves forward, because we wouldn't want those people to clump, because now we have people in our community, which, budget or no budget, one of the things I hope we can all remember when somebody puts themselves out there is, first of all, it's kind of hard to put yourself out there, right? Because you face rejection. But, for the most part, you're trying to be of service. And so it's pretty cool. So we certainly wouldn't want to have a room full of chiefs, right, as they say, and nobody to support those people. So that's something we learned, that I don't think it really happened in that election too badly. We definitely didn't get like an entire room of people who I think all wanted to be elected, but we're going to work on that. So that's one thing.
The biggest clumping I think we saw of interest was the one with Hans, Luke, Eves, and John Heater. When four were in one group, that was a pretty concentrated clump of brain power. Yeah, but hey, that's the nature of the luck. I mean,
that was round 2 though.
It was round two.
Well, by then, I mean, it's expected, right? Because anybody who makes it, I mean, at that point, every group's going to have that, if you think about it, because it's only elected people left. But I hear you. There's definitely going to be people, for example, who don't want to go on another round, who wouldn't campaign, just because, I mean, again, you're talking about pretty substantial responsibility here. I mean, it could be, again, $250,000 budget is money's responsibility. That's not something you just... And if you can make a few decisions and forget about, right?
Yeah. And if you don't want that, like if you didn't plan to get there and then you're forced there, it's like, man, I'm gonna wreck my reputation and trust here, because I didn't want all that money.
I want to blow it.
That was it here for. Yeah, I'm gonna totally screw up. Don't give it to me. I don't want that.
So I don't think it'll work out ultimately where after the first round, say that next round is, say 32 or something. First round elected representatives, all of them are not going to want to be elected again. I think you'll again have that. So we'll probably do a redesignation as I think about that, right? Because we'd want to spread that out too in that round.
If we get too cute on the because the more randomization you remove, the greater chance you add of gaming it potentially.
That's true. Because I guess once people know, then they could,
I don't know how exactly.
But I don't know, but you're right. Anyway, I definitely think it'll work well for the first round at this point. But it's also why we're doing these trials. And so, when you participate in it, you really are being of service to the community in the highest way, I think, right now, because refining this process is really critical. I mean, outside of bringing in members, which obviously is important. But getting these elections right is going to be at the heart of it, because let's face it, if they're a disaster, you're going to have a lot of people probably drop out. First of all, as members, you're definitely not going to be attractive to new members. So it's an important thing for us to get right, and I'm confident that we will. So
100%. And so, what's the skin? I know we talked. There's going to be some skin in the game on this next test. That's
one EOS.
Just one EOS.
Yeah, it's one EOS, which hopefully is. But that's part of it, because the idea is that in official elections, there will be some sort of additional dues to participate in the election. But in this instance, I will add to the prize pool. So ideally, if we were to get, let's say the minimum 200, it's at least another 200 EOS, that'll get distributed into the pool. I have to double check what Dan wanted to do there. I think that's going to the first layer and spread out amongst that first layer. So the 10 might be a 12 or 15 or something.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Maybe, I don't know, Chris, want to open it up and see if anybody else here?
Yeah.
You guys have any comments if you participated in the elections, or if you haven't yet? What do you?
Because Mike's joining us in a few minutes still, eh? So so we got time. Yeah. Anybody you want to? Lenny, anything you want to say? Patrick, Joshua, you guys have been hanging out at the open mic too.
And if it's a no, that's fine too. We don't need to force anybody.
We're not offended. We can just talk.
Yeah, definitely.
Blah blah blah.
Get into what we were talking about before. It's not really relevant, but it might be entertaining. Talk about my dumpster fire of a relationship life.
Yeah.
That wasn't not good.
Oh, we see
Oh,
Patrick's got his
Patrick,
video on.
here's a
Hello,
hey.
hello,
How are you?
Chris. Hello, Dominic.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
So Patrick, do you have any what are your thoughts on the upcoming practice election? First of all, are you going to participate? And then if you are, are you any concerns, anything you think we should change from the first election? Any feedback?
So first, I watched your election, Chris, to have a good understanding. What does it mean about about the reliability round after round, because very important to be reliable when we say something and we advance into the I don't like the word game, but it is a game in
Right.
a way, in a way. But we have not to be a player just as in a sport, but it's a competition in a way, and you have to be honest with what you say. You have to go to the next level, always with the same narrative, and more explaining in depth what you want to achieve. And you did that very well, Chris, in this first mock election. Until the end, you were aligned with what you said. So that's that. So for me, if I want to go with this test election, it's to testify what I have already said, and I don't change my mind. Maybe that seems maybe a little bit pretentious, because I was doing a kind of video named "Testify Your Intent." Testify your intent on EOS.
Yep.
And for me, Eden is the perfect way to testify first your intent, then you have to deliver what you have testified as an intent.
That's right.
And after that, equal trust, because trust is equal to testify your intent and then to deliver. If you testify your intent and you are able to deliver, the people will trust you. That someone reliable, resiliency. When something unexpected happens, you continue the road, whatever the things are. So, but that's personal. That's personal. Not everyone thinking like that. But for me, it's very important to do that. That's personal. That's for me. Maybe for someone else, trust is something else. There are so many features for trust, but maybe we can arrive to a consensus. Trust is equal to testifying your intent and to deliver what you have said. It's interesting,
Patrick, as you're talking about, right? And one thing I hadn't thought about is that because of the transparency in the recordings, you're right. I mean, it is a testimony, and it's not even so much that, you know, even if you don't necessarily get elected, if you want any shot of getting elected later, you're going to need to follow through, right? Because if you take like a sour grapes approach, right, to say, well, I wanted the money because I was going to work really hard to bring in new members, and then suddenly people look and it's 6 months to the next election and you haven't inducted one person, you haven't witnessed anybody else's. It's like, is he really, you know, and you go to the next election, I want the money to bring in new members. People are going to be like, nah. Yeah. Like don't pull that again, because that doesn't work, right?
Maybe I will say something unpolitical for Eden. I respect Eden. I respect Eden on OS, on EOS. Sorry, Eden on EOS. I respect that so much. But I will say I have not wait on Eden to testify my intent and my love for EOS and to deliver months after month. That has nothing to do if I am elected. I onboarded into Eden because I think it's a very fantastic experiment we are living. Like EOS, the Everyone Open Society. EOS for me is an Everyone Open Society since day one. And when I was pitching that, sometimes some people told me, yeah, we are not in the Disneyland world, you know, everyone open society. Okay, that was never that. For me, everyone open society, and even for me, it's not a private society. There are also, we hear sometimes, Eden, it's indeed a secret society or a private society. Yeah, there are many groups in Eden. It's fractal. There are many groups. You can do your stuff. And at a point, maybe your stuff that you are doing, you will see that it is compatible with another stuff of someone else. And you will link with this other stuff. And at the end, you have the 1 + 1 = 3. That's just beautiful. And my proposal that I have wrote on eoscommunity.org, I was first transferred to Chris because he was posting, do you need some funds for a project? So that was that question. So I have answered to that. After, Dominic, you have also asked what would be the reason if you go into Eden? Values, vision, what you will do, and how you will use the funds. So I was trying to do that very conscientiously. And my answer to you and the answer to Chris, it's exactly the same. So I have posted 2 times the same thing.
Right.
And after that, I was telling myself, now I have to do a kind of 2 minutes. It's not my, I have to make violence myself. So I was doing 2 minutes. That was a challenge for me. 2 minutes to explain what I want to do. And it was successful. I was doing this video. I have posted on Twitter the video. And in a couple of hours, 50 like and 14 tweets, a retweet.
Nice.
So
that's
mean
good.
that testifying your intent works in this life. Because it's too easy. Maybe I will just say that after that, I will let you continue. Otherwise, I speak too much. But something that I was thinking myself, we have the peace treaty. The peace treaty is a middle of, it's a faster page. It's easy to digest. Hopefully, it's easy to digest. It's not like More Equal Animals that I am reading currently. I am not finished. And I think you can reiterate the book many times. And I am also hearing the audio version. And I was thinking, okay, to onboard into Eden, if you just answer to those 2 questions, have you read and understood the peace treaty? You can say, yes, I have read and understood, but indeed, maybe or maybe not. Maybe you have never read a piece of line. And the second question: do you abide to the rules of the peace treaty? And you say, into the eyes, yes. Okay, that could be a sincere yes, authentic yes, but it's difficult to know. After that, you have the people that is entering into this everyone open society or Eden, yeah, on EOS. We are on EOS. And after that, what is your goal? Maybe you want just to participate because you want to have a voice, like in Voice. We have no more voice. So Eden is a new voice. You can have a voice. Finally, we have a voice. Or maybe you just want to see how it goes. If it succeeds or it succeeds not. You have always people that are only going in something just to see. Wait and see, we will see. And maybe they will don't do anything. So indeed, what is the real effectiveness of the people that are into Eden? But we will see that when there will be the election. And maybe, as you said, I heard you before, if I heard you correctly, you said maybe after the election, the first round, maybe, there are some people that will have not the courage or not the, let's say, not the balls to testify and to continue, because it's about money, it's about responsibility, it's about accountability. So maybe they will be no more here, and it's good because that will show exactly which people will continue into EOS.
Mhm.
And that will make like automatic cleaner.
Yeah, well, it's
automatic
self-selecting,
clean.
right? It's
Yeah,
self-selecting, which
a
is
self
a part of it.
automated,
Mhm.
you see? So, yeah.
Good
That's
comments.
why it's great that, I mean, if you don't vote for yourself, you can't be forced, right? It doesn't work. And because that could happen, right? I mean, especially maybe people who have a little bit more of a standing, more well-known. By default, you could see people kind of, right? Because this happens oftentimes too with community and leadership is like, no, you do it. You do it, you do it, you do it. And if your heart's not in it, or you don't have the time or the energy, or you have other commitments, then it's kind of setting yourself up for failure. So
yeah,
the self-selecting part is very important.
And something paradoxal, you can be here since the beginning of EOS, first day, ICO, or many from BitShares, maybe when you love Dan from BitShares already in 2014. And maybe you onboard into EOS, you do all fantastically. And when it comes to deliver, to testify your intent and to deliver, you fade or you leave. That could happen to many of us, indeed.
Yeah, but in the end, I don't know. See, to me, you can, as long as you care about EOS and care about the ecosystem, you just have to show up to the first round and just listen. Just that's all you need to do. This idea, like if that can be testifying. My intent is just to be here, vote for the first round, and I love the project and I want EOS to succeed. I mean, you could just be a bag holder. I have EOS and I don't want to sell at a loss. So I just want to make my money. So I'm going to be here to vote for a good project just so it makes some dough back. I mean, it could be that simple, and that's not wrong. I mean, that's okay.
Yeah, that was your intent. You were in listening mode. I love that because myself, I have to make me violence. I am able to be silent also if I want. If I am prepared. But if I am not prepared like now, I exactly say what I mean. Exactly say what I mean. I don't prepare to have a mask, you know.
I'd love to play poker with you, Patrick.
This is not Carnival,
not in a bad way,
Carnival,
but I feel like I might be able to take your money.
It's not now. Okay. You have to wait in February. I will have a mask.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Be yourself, Patrick. You're great.
Thank you for all what you are doing. Yeah.
Thanks, Patrick. The honesty and the way that you speak, and I think people, I don't know, there's something contagious about honesty, and I think it's hard to tell in a digital thing. I mean, people could say whatever they want, but I don't know. You start to pick up on people, and even in this format, I do anyway. I get a gut feeling still. Like I'm sure we all do. You still kind of get a feeling. Like you can see someone's face. It's not over the phone. Harder over the phone. This is a little better at least, right?
A lot.
For me, it's a perpetual improvement. EOS is always improving. So us as human, we can also improve. So we say always code intent is low. Code intent is low on EOS. That's for me. That was just fantastic when I was hearing that for the first time. Code intent is low. That's just fantastic with the Ricardian contract. But now we have Eden, and on Eden we have human. Not fake bots, not trolls, but we don't want that. We want real human. We want to have a voice. To be heard.
Speaking of voices, let's give Joshua. He turned his camera on.
Exactly.
Maybe he's got a few things he wants to say. You want to jump in here, Josh?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I don't want to interrupt the flow of what you guys have going on. I kind of want to speak to what I wasn't going to, but you kind of just sparked it in my mind, Patrick. I think there are some people that might share this sentiment, but I've always been a little bit concerned when it comes to governance I feel like the rule of man has always kind of been the most virulent disease. And so removing human errors from the equation has always been kind of appealing. And I consider myself like very human centric. Like I'm very pro-human. I feel like in general, naturally, humans are very benevolent, and maybe the human organism itself is maybe the closest thing to what people describe as God, and ultimately it is omnibenevolent. But with that said, it wasn't, excuse me, it wasn't like it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't hindering me from participating in the first mock election. But the first mock election, the experience of it, and then kind of the aftermath and getting to observe all of the rooms that I wasn't in and stuff like that, and to sense the sentiment, it really changed, because I even made a post on the forum about this. Like, hey, I'm concerned. I think we need some kind of a contract where people can't, to help remove, like to bind them to removing that rule of man from the equation. But my perspective has been changing, where I'm realizing like, wow, the gamification of this system is actually bringing out the best in people. And maybe it's not human decision making that's the problem. Maybe it's just the game theory of it, or the lack of it, that has always caused this problem. And so it's really shifted my perspective in that kind of way. And I have seen some people in the community, like one block producer, I'm not going to mention any names, comes to mind, where they have kind of expressed a similar sentiment. And I think just observing and experiencing the elections themselves could really restore your faith in how individual human beings can cooperate and work together and really do what's in their best interest, as well as what's in the best interest of the group. It kind of crushes a lot of paradigms, I would say.
It's so true. And
I agree. I agree.
There's a couple things that is really interesting. You mentioned like humans are this, like we do so many evil things. Essentially, we make so many selfish and shitty decisions, and look what we've done to the planet. But at the same time, like there's a polarity here, and obviously a gradient in the middle. We've also done some amazingly beautiful things, and we have the capacity for great compassion and love. And so it's like, how do we channel it to the love compassion side? And I know from my own, like I grew up in a small town, and so less than 500 people, everyone knew each other, and so it's like, everyone knows each other. It's terrible, but it's not. Like that's how as humans, that's how we evolved. If you believe in evolution and psychological evolution, like we evolved, and our disposition is meant to be tribal. It's meant to be small communities where trust is an instinct. Like society today has completely forgotten the value of trust. Like we've forgotten what trust means. We've forgotten how to keep trust, to earn trust, to retain that trust after we've earned it. We just don't care. We live in these, I can be anonymous and pseudonymous, and I can live in a big metropolis and cut somebody off on the road and give them the finger because I don't know them. There's no social repercussion for that. That's not natural. That is an absolutely unnatural way to live as a human. We evolved in small tribes that would have been spread apart. If you did something that's basically antisocial in your tribe, and you're not getting help with somebody plowing your field, if something breaks, you're not getting help from your neighbor, and in fact, you might be exiled. Like there's no guarantee to be a part of a tribe as it should have been. Like you need to be a contributing member, or they're going to kick you out. And if you get kicked out, where are you going? You're a nomad in the fields. Like this, right? So it's like there was huge consequence to being a dick in a small town in a tribe, right? So now there is no consequence. I'll just make a new pseudonym. I'll just troll somebody else. Like who cares? Like we've been sort of this ingrained in our psyche now that there's zero consequence to being an asshole, and that is not how humans are meant to be. And so to me, like Eden will break that. Like this is something where we have a chance to actually become a cohesive community with consequence. With consequence, if you break your word, and like you say, Patrick, you state your intent, and then you're measured by how well you actually delivered. And so that's far more natural and human. And yeah, that's how we should be. Like this trust idea, we need to build that back up and recognize the importance of trust and learn how to maintain it and keep it.
Well, that's a part of it. What I've tried to emphasize to people at this stage, because now we are in the growth and invitations, is it's not meant to be exclusive. It's not what it's about. It's not supposed to be a who you know club. It's supposed to be, what's your relationship to the people involved, right? And are you willing to take the time to build one if you don't have it? And of course, we're working hard on creating numerous ways for that to happen, right? But the Monday meetings are about, somebody doesn't know anybody, come on, introduce yourself, right? Let's get people engaged, because we want diversity, but at the same time, this membership process is our biggest, in my mind, and best line of defense, if you will, against the trolling, or the power hungry, right? The person with the axe to grind or whatever, who, might seek that type of power and use it in a way that we've typically seen it used, unfortunately. But if the general pool agrees, right, and that's where the peace treaty comes in, if we share for the most part a kind of core set of values around trust and integrity, we don't know what that looks like. That's a different type of qualification, right? I've never heard of a voting system that really says the most important thing is trust and integrity, because that's the truth, right? That really is the for anything Dan's ever said, about it, he'd be the first one to tell you that's the main qualifier. Agreeing to the process and the consensus, well, of course. Why would you come join Eden and then suddenly say, well, I'm not going to go in the elections because they're garbage. That's not going to make a lot of sense. But this trust component, we don't know what that's like on a large scale. But I think it's not a leap to suggest that it should produce better outcomes. It should elect better leaders in general, I think, with better integrity and better intent. So, well, anyway, wrap up. Appreciate you guys, contributing and talking discussion. That's a big part of what we want this to be. But in the kind of second half of the show, there'll be time for discussion following our kind of guest star here. But we just had Mike jump on. Thanks a lot, Mike. I know you're super busy, and I basically just tasked you yesterday. So thanks a lot for just coming on here and spending some time with us.
Eventually, we'll have to up our production game so we can, do some like little.
Yeah, we need a producer. Chris, we gotta put that out there. We need a producer who wants to produce our show.
Yeah, that's all right.
So, hey, Mike, what's going on? You're muted. I know it's your first time on.
So here's the amateur.
There we
Hi,
go.
amateur. Welcome to the show. Doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm not late, right?
No,
right.
Actually.
Okay, perfect.
No, it's great. Perfect. Actually. Yeah. Really nice.
Yep.
Yeah. We're looking at
over things.
Kind of 45, so the second half here is, but considering this is really a kind of an intro in the purpose of what Chris and I were trying to generate and create here is that it will be a mostly informative, right? We hope that eventually we'll get a rhythm. And I know, Mike, you and I have talked about this, and I've talked about this with Brandon, having consistent avenues for communication with the community that are reliable. And you say, right, if you want to know the news in your hometown, you got the local paper and you knew that's where you went. Now it's, of course, a little different, but we want that for the community so that people don't have to hunt and peck for everything. So, all these will be made available, but as someone who's really been, working at this for a long time, and I don't think people realize, that there were groups, the More Equal Animals in this governance process far before Dan, made any announcements. But I had a question for you that I've actually never asked you, but what's your perspective on kind of the evolution, right? Because this idea has evolved a lot, right? So what have you seen that's changed, just over the last, say, 3-4 months?
So like since the book?
Yeah, kind of, right? Like, how have you seen it evolve and change, and kind of what lessons maybe have we already learned, or just, any insights you have as someone who's been, kind of a true OG?
Well, yeah, I mean, when I first came across the idea, when Dan was talking about it, I mean, maybe even pre-publication. His original article, actually, his original blog post. This was way before the book. A few of us had played with, what would this look like? And when you get into the details of this, now we've actually seen a trial election, right? Like, we've seen it actually happen. But back then we were like, so how many in a group, and how many layers, and how long is the election? Do you have a text chat? Do you do like an hour and vote the way we did in the trial election, or do you have like a week period where you can talk and chat and choose someone? And like there were no rules, right? We didn't even have the book, let alone, we just had a page and a half or 2 or 3 pages of blog post. And I think that process has continued. Back then we were just taking a lot of guesses at a lot of stuff, and got some picture of it. But every time we do that, right, Dan's out there in the future, He's communicating to us from the future. And we now can take these ideas and say, well, it could look like this. And every time we do that, I think there's parts of it that lock in, like, yeah, that's how we should do that. And then there's the next frontier of how we did it. We all sit around and go, I don't know if that's how best to do that, right? Dan originally said 4 to 12 people in a group were the original numbers.
Mhm.
And then after the trial election, I think all of us that participated said, man, if we had 12 people in a group,
Oh yeah.
and even half the people wanted to
Mhm.
run, how are you
Disaster.
going to get that done in 50 minutes?
Mhm.
And that kind of naturally fit with how many people can you run in video technology that's based on WebRTC? Well, it's somewhere around 6.
Mhm.
Well, 6 is very comfortable in 50 minutes, so that kind of brought a technical limitation that fit with the social limitation, the discussion limitation. So there's a lot of that stuff where size of groups, distribution. On a technical side, if we're going to run an election, how do we distribute 300 people
Mhm.
in a structure, right? How do we distribute 5,000 people? We could try to do that algorithmically, which is actually the direction we've gone.
Mhm.
We have some crazy talented people on our team who can do all that. But that's led to some interesting scenarios where, well, we can allow the final round to be very variable because it's randomly selected. So maybe we can allow that to get larger than 6, but we don't want it to be less than 3. Anyway, I could give a billion examples, but that just gives you some feel for how much this changes and how much, budgets, right? We've been bashing it at budgets for, I don't know, 2 weeks now or something like that. The election process and how budgets will fit into that. And I think that's another great example where we have how the government does it. We have how small groups do it, or maybe a church does it, a social community club. But how are we going to do it? We can disperse it at any time. We can disperse it real time. We could do by the minute budget dispersal. We have a lot of options that most don't. So we've just played with, how about this? We'll throw something up on the wall and someone will go, well, that's a mess for tax reasons. We're like, oh yeah, okay. Well, how
Right.
about this? Well, that's a mess because how do we track that? Oh yeah, okay. And it's just like a bunch of wrong answers until we find something that kind of fits all the needs.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because that speaks to, we're still figuring out like decentralized communities, right? And transparency and how to handle that, because I mean, everything can't be transparent because there's privacy issues at times and all that, but it's interesting. What, Chris, you had a comment.
Yeah, well, you said something interesting there, Mike, about you need at least 3 in that last round. So I wonder what happens if you don't get it because of not enough people. We have too many broken, not enough consensus reachers. That'll be.
Well, and this is something that I actually intend on. I have a little kind of pet project that I haven't gotten to yet. I did half of it in C++ recently and then decided I should just do this in Excel and make it faster. But I think there are going to be little corner cases that even if the algorithm we've ironed out can distribute X number of people, assuming representation from each group in a reliable way, where there are no corner cases that don't work, this always distributes people appropriately. There are times where maybe you have this fluke outcome where, well, we should have had 6 people in the final round based on the next round lower, but we end up with 2. Like that could happen. It's
Groups
very
don't reach
unlikely, but it could happen.
consensus, right? That's an option. We're
there's some-
expecting them to always reach consensus when you create that, but how can you really plan for that? They're almost like black swans, right? Little mini ones. You can't just say, well, the algorithm is going to account for this and then 2 and then 1. Like, I don't know. Mathematically, I'm not a real genius on that stuff at all, but I know it gets difficult.
Well, and where I sound like a noob is game tournaments. I spoke with someone from the community who just he's done a lot of gaming. He has the tournament mindset deeply ingrained in his head, and he brought so many cool options to the table that I just didn't know about because I don't do that stuff. There's a I'm trying to think of the name, a double elimination, right? There's very different ways of running tournaments that produce very different outcomes. and something like double elimination, where you're running the tournament and then kind of running a second tournament with everyone who didn't win, right?
Mhm.
Now you've
Consolation
got,
prize.
yeah, well, not only consolation prize, you get this interesting redundancy where at least we have an outcome, right? Or if you put, as we had in the trial election, 3 or 4, I forget quite, I think it was John's room, right? You got, oh no, I have 4 rock stars in one room. Well, now you're going to eliminate 3 people who might have made it way further under different circumstances.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you do double elimination, they'll have a second chance to propagate where they technically shouldn't have been eliminated so quickly. So in the case of we get to the final round and there's one person, if we have a double elimination, that's going to produce other outcomes that might help fix that. So we're not even considering that at this point, right? That's
No.
like, we just thought that, like, oh, that would be a way to deal with that. But again, like every time we take a step into this future Dan's created, it gives us an opportunity to kind of look around and see, like, okay, what are the problems standing here? What are the potential solutions standing here?
Yeah, you can't cover every edge case, and this is it's like Coda's law versus intent of Coda's law. I mean, you're fighting the same battle, right? In the end, there's going to be some. You could maybe make it all programmatic, and it'll just fluid. That could be a good end goal, but it's going to take a while to get there.
Yeah, it's I keep going back to what my experience of the first, and it was 64. We know that as we add people, it's more variables and things can change, but no one questioned the consensus mechanism. And it was pretty impressive that 64 people who don't really know each other. We're not talking about 64 people that have been in the same church for, years and years or something, but within an hour, or 50 minutes actually was what it came out to per round, reached consensus, and we're happy. I mean, Chris, let's face it, we let him win, but still, it was a viable.
No, I had luck on my side. I just,
I have all the stuff, and I've shared some of that with you, Mike, and Chris. Like, there wasn't any feedback that said, this was garbage, and I would never do this again. And and it was fun, and that's weird, right? I mean, that's awesome though, right? Can we enjoy making serious decisions? And maybe that is the freaking secret sauce too, right?
Yeah,
if somberness breeds fear, right? And fear is not usually good. Fear is when we want to control. Fear is when human beings tend to do really bad things. But we're all having a good time. Maybe we don't, right? There we go. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike's coaching backboard. I love it.
It's fear and also apathy. Like this eliminates apathy, right?
Yeah.
The traditional voting processes, you get a lot of people who just don't care.
No.
Where here, you're there, you must care a little bit.
This is engaging, very much.
Well, and I actually had a question I keep not thinking to ask you, Dominic. You occurred to me like you must be the duck with the feet flying underwater. You looked pretty calm during running that thing, but like especially round 1 with all those people and all those results, I don't know how you looked so calm. From your perspective, when you saw results coming in and you were managing all the things you were managing, one of the things I've always meant to ask you is, it seemed to me that my rounds always ran close to 50 minutes, and that there were lots of people who were done far earlier than that. What was like the average time for people to come to consensus?
Yeah, I mean, it was different. I don't recall exactly, and that's something that we should probably measure. Actually, I'll make a note of that later. But I only remember, like, in that first round, it was like one team I think only took about maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but everybody else was within a statistical, mean, I would say, or what would I say, a insignificant statistical range, like from probably 40 to 50. I mean, everybody took most of it. It wasn't like dribs and drabs. Yeah, it wasn't too random. There was like maybe 1 or 2 groups I recall that were ahead of others, but then most people did take the time.
I think a few groups too, just like from watching the videos, they had come to decision and then they just chat.
That's true too. That's true
too. Right? Oh, it looks like people are starting to put we should probably vote now too and make it okay. We should do it now, right?
Well, I know for me, we did. I kind of made sure that we did an initial vote around halfway. So around 20 minutes, we did an initial vote. Being someone who made it to the board completely unexpectedly, I was surprised both times when I had a shot to advance, because someone asked me at the end of round, the first round, what was your platform? And I said, expecting to not win. I said, a platform. So doing that initial vote at 20 minutes was eye-opening for me personally, but it also gave us the opportunity of like, we may already be in consensus and don't know it. I don't know what other people are thinking. I don't know where everyone else is. So at 20 minutes, if you find, oh, well, we already agree, then hangout time with cool people, which was a lot of that. But also like, okay, well, so you're the one advancing. Let's talk about what we want you to represent. Let's actually talk about what we want to push forward as an idea.
And we saw that, right?
Yeah.
Almost like campaign strategy then, right? Okay, you're a horse, and then everybody's like suddenly your campaign advisor. But that's important, because that's like additional, consensus in a way too.
What might be neat is I know I understand there's software getting built, right, to help really expedite and like help facilitate these elections. It'd be interesting if during when you get in your group, you almost like have the opportunity to vote straight away. And you just, everyone, you can, if you look at someone's face or somehow there's a table and it shows who's voting for who, and you can see it in real time. And as we're discussing, you might see someone, oh, okay, I voted for them now. And then you can
moving,
see it, like, right? And you can just
yeah.
sort of see, like, yeah, if you're voting for yourself, then you see it right away that you're voting for yourself. And then it might, like you say, Mike, like because if you don't ask early enough, you might waste a bunch of time unnecessarily. And you could have used that time to like coach the person who you want to see move on, or not coach, but influence anyway. So that'd be interesting to just kind of see it real time. And then even on the playback, right? If you could have that as part of the playback, and when you watch this, the fun reality TV part of this, and see, oh, look, he just see what he said and it changed his mind. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it'll almost be like Survivor when someone just instantly goes on the outs because they, did this one thing, and it's like they're just
yeah. They say one thing, and all of a sudden all the check boxes
you're on the bottom.
Somebody
You're
else.
done.
Oh no, that was the wrong answer.
You sucked in the competition. You're out. No,
that was the idea from the beginning, to have a leaderboard, and we actually discussed. A lot of people asked in ramping up to the trial election, and I think even at the very beginning of the trial election, there's a lot of asking about, well, do we vote for runners up? How does this voting thing work? And there's a lot of different ways to vote. In fact, even in traditional government, there are locales today experimenting with, rank who you want in order. And so we have like these fallback votes to work with. And the idea of having a leaderboard, you're right. Like as soon as maybe you hear the opening statements and boom, there's a vote, and you've got a leaderboard that tells you, oh, well, if I switch my vote, I would win. Like that could happen in the first 5 to 10 minutes. And like you said, you don't know. So a leaderboard is kind of the vision for how those meetings would work.
It just makes it more efficient, right? Because there's a race against time, and so and if you do get more efficient, maybe that does allow you to increase the group size as through trial and error, right? To see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we actually kind of put in fairly close to the election, a bit last minute, but the realization of, hey, we should probably have people like declare. Right. And we added that in as part of the process and the procedure. And I'm not sure. I think a couple of rooms didn't get that. I mean, it tried to really, say that several times, and it was in the instructions, just to go around the room real quick at the beginning and say, are you running or not? But obviously we can do a better job. And I think already, one of the things that's been asked of me in running this one is that we are going to try it with kind of pre-declaring, at least a reasonable period before the election starts, and then we'll randomize so that we spread somewhat evenly people who want to run, so we can avoid the one room clump type thing, and then randomize the people that are looking to be, supporters, voters, decision makers. And again, we'll keep going. The core consensus mechanism is in place, and it's good to let people know, because we do run into some of that. And I know, Mike and I have run into a bunch of people, at times that are I really wouldn't even do it that way. And it's like, well, we're not gonna go all the way back to like, we think we should do like a democratic vote. No. Okay. The consensus mechanism's core concept is not up for debate, right? We're gonna see this through. That's the thing we're agreeing to. But there are, little parts of it that you can't find out in a theoretical discussion like you talked about at the beginning. And I think that's important for people to know, and part of what we're trying to do with some of these different things that these meetings and we're putting together is to just get more information. And Mike, I know also behind the scenes you're working on a lot of that, and I've been trying to as well. But we expect to get a lot more info out over the next several weeks. I think that'll be a big part of the push.
Yeah, and I think I'll take this opportunity to get a piece of this said instead of just having to write it later. One of the things I really want to communicate better, and yeah, I don't even know how to preface all this. There's a lot of
Go
questions
for it, man.
we've all had.
It's supposed to be chill. Just be you, man. You're a good guy. Just say it.
There's a lot of questions we've all come up with. When we get time with Dan, there are times when I'm just piling through like, here's the list of questions. How do you see this working? How do you see that working? This was asked in the community. What does this mean? And as I'm getting those answers, I'll be publishing those on the wiki. And what I want to say, which will be written at the top of that page, but I just want to say it so people can hear it real time. This is, as you've said numerous times today, Dominic, this is an experiment, right? This is bleeding edge stuff. And so what I'm trying to do in the document is share not only, the right answer, right? What did Dan say the right answer was? This is actually much more, here's the most recent thinking.
Right.
It's changed already. It's going to
Right.
continue to change. We're discovering stuff all the time, but here's the most recent answers. And we are converging, but these answers are changing.
Yeah. And but if people can I think see it for what it is like we're an extension of Dan's mind at this point, right? Yeah, he started it. And I know Dan, and you know him 10 times better than I do, but I don't care what anybody says about him. He's not a guy who's looking to seek power. He's a guy who wants to see this done a better way. He's a better way guy. It can be done a better way. Let's make it happen. And if the role he needs to play originally is some leadership role, he'll do it. But can we see it? The wisdom of the crowd, because it's a big part of what we're trying to achieve here too. And Dan's hypothesis in the book is about that, right? Is that if we are a group of 1,000 and we get 100 people with at least a somewhat substantial budget, that's when we can experiment with a lot of ideas. That if we're just funding traditionally, funding committees will tend to be, first of all, extremely conservative, right? Because if they make frankly shitty decisions, they're not going to be on the committee long. But it doesn't lead to doesn't lend itself to experimentation at all. Whereas this is designed to experiment. And I think we have to hopefully remember in the spirit of it is that the experiment itself is designed to experiment, if that makes sense. It's supposed to be living, breathing, growing around core principles, around certain values and concepts. And hopefully we can do a good job helping people be a part of it and understand that.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that is kind of the worst part about it, the hardest part to deal with as a member, as a participant, is we're not going to like aspects of this, but it's designed that way, right? We want the system where Dan won't always be the Satoshi. Like that's the goal.
Sure.
Right? As much as some people would want him to run it, for ongoingly, we want a system where the outcome's not guaranteed. That's kind of one of the major goals. And I think a lot of that's been really fascinating for me. I'll take ways I know stuff can run traditionally, like I was talking about budgets earlier, how I know elections work. And then Dan's coming from crypto consensus. Like he's got this whole other game theory crypto consensus thing that he's mixing with traditional politics and economics, and he's got this soup that, you know, only he knows how to make that soup. And so we'll throw a question his way, and I'll have a proposed, you know, the team will put together a proposed answer. You know, what about running budgets this way? And he'll just say, oh, well, you know, the game theory doesn't work out. You should try it this way. And all of us are like, oh, yeah, like we can see it once he says it, but there's so many separate areas and areas of study that he can bring to bear and mix them in a way that where you're satisfying numerous things at once.
So he's building a
So
different
it's-
paradigm, right? I mean,
Yeah.
really trying to build a different paradigm. It's a totally different way of looking at elections if you can step back a little and go, right? And that's usually going to be the discomfort. The discomfort is, I haven't lived in this universe anymore. In the universe of your own mind, meaning I don't quite understand this entirely. I don't entirely know where it's going to go. I don't entirely know what its outcome will be because I have nothing to look at yet. And, you know, first election starts that process of data. And at some point, assuming it's successful at what it wants to do, which is really create value, right? By bringing people together into a kind of a greater whole that's more harmonious than it has been previously. And then it'll be second nature, right? And it comes in, it's like the core software loads. But this is a whole new thing. We just went from Windows to Linux. And it sucks at first to some degree, right? Because you don't know how to do anything and you're not sure and you constantly got to look shit up, but then you start getting a hang of it, right? You're saying it's a different way of thinking now.
I was just considering words for like the third time a couple nights ago, and I was reminded of that terrible learning curve at the beginning. But yeah, I think crypto has this rich history of using the wrong words for things. Oh, you'll install a wallet on your phone.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
right.
What if my phone dies? Will I lose my money?
Yeah.
Well, no, because your
No.
money's not really in the wallet.
Right. It's actually not a wallet at all. It's just a cryptographic signature
money,
machine.
There's a wallet. There's this thing called keys. You never see them. You know, we have grown up on terrible paradigms. Andreas Antonopoulos talks. He has a whole talk just about the terrible terminology we use. And I have thought many times already that there's a potential that this book leads to that kind of outcome, in the sense that where do we organize a group of people to elect a leader? Well, government. That's how we think about it, right? Military hierarchies, you don't vote, right? In a corporate environment, the employees are rarely voting for the CEO. So what's the paradigm we have? Government. So we use the term election. Well, is it really an election, right? I was having a really cool conversation over beers with some people, and we came up with this, maybe we call it an alignment. It's like a sci-fi thing, like, oh yes, we're getting together for the great alignment. You know,
or
there are
selection,
other words we could use. Selection,
which is a little
exactly.
different. We're selecting someone.
Alignment's good
electing.
though. Alignment's good
Alignment's
because
good.
it's the whole consensus. In order to achieve consensus, you are aligning people.
We're bringing
right?
ourselves into alignment. Yeah, where there's this almost pyramidal structure of yeses, you know, kind of they're building up to.
And to be a little woo-woo about it, is your group split by the end of the selection process between the one that got elected and those that voted, or were you in alignment and this was our choice? It's a completely different paradigm. So I think the words, like I said, I'm looking ahead, trying to think, like, is this the right word for this? When I saw Lenny on here. Lenny was part of a discussion on the forums to name the levels, right? What are these representatives at this level? And some of the recommendations are awesome. Like, I love people's suggestions there. But where do we come from? We have government. That's somewhat hierarchical, so we can name it after government things or geographic political entities. We have the military. I don't know that we want to use that paradigm, and I'm probably not the only one who doesn't know all the ranks in order. I don't know how all that works.
Sure.
The Catholic Church, right? Similarly, I don't know how they all go in order. So the paradigms we have are not perfect for this, but one of the suggestions I like a lot, it's I can't say I've heard a lot of people who like it as much as I do, but there was a set of recommendations on that forum post where they were all just alignment type names, harmonizers and aggregators, and like they're nonsense words.
The
and
great integrator.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not
Nice.
like in order, but they get the vibe a lot
Right.
better.
Synonyms,
than the other
essentially,
words.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the first systems I was thinking about this, a little while back, where in these other hierarchical systems, if you think about it, in a way, no one has power except the most powerful person, really, considering they can jump in and override anybody at any moment, right? So
Yeah.
I can
Ego,
be in charge of a smaller group in a corporation as a manager of my group. And so long as my superior doesn't give a shit about what I'm doing so much, I can do things. I have power, but at any given moment, it can just be taken. Whereas in this, that's not true, because you have a budget. And if you are selected, elected, integrated, holified, turned into the fly, maybe, beamed up by Scotty. All right, I'll stop.
Wow, I want to make a Borg reference that I can't assimilated. Yeah.
Assimilated. Yes, exactly.
You do have power. I don't even call it power, but the ability to create change, the ability to
You have influence.
influence. Yeah, love it better. You do, and it can't be taken. Higher levels don't take from you. If you think about it, or next layers don't pull, whereas everything else, in a way, does. I don't know.
That's a really cool way to talk about something Dan talks about in the book. He refers to manpower, right? You can't. There's this thing. I think it's a Chinese saying where if the generation that makes the wealth will be lost in 3 generations. The one that made it, the one that used it, and the last ones that don't have it. And I think the way you're saying that really draws out. Hierarchies tend to have power at the top and it's distributed down. And this is the opposite way. This is,
it's distributed
I was
up.
put in power.
Yeah.
I was put in power by these people whose opinion matters. And I'm giving that consensus to anyone above me. So yeah, that's a cool way to say that.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking it is very different. And I think that's why it's also hard for people to maybe move away from some of these other things. Are kind of zero-sum games. A lot of the other types of elections, because of this, it's a winner take all, right? Esque thing. And they're thinking about this that way, going, maybe the individual who, doesn't know a lot of people, especially at this stage, because it's quite small, and they're looking and they're going, I don't know, Chris, Dominic looks like Mike and Dominic have some interactions, and they know Lenny, and I don't know any of these people, so I'm not going to get elected, and this is going to mean nothing to me. Not true. Because first of all, in the process of your initial group, I think we're going to see lots of different little compromises along the way, right? For example, as straightforward as, listen, this is the initiative I want. I understand, because it'll be transparent. Your budget's going to be approximately, 10,000 EOS or whatever it is. I want 500 for my thing. I don't really want to be you, but I'm going to vote for basically the person who will fund me. And assuming
fair.
that thing's not ridiculous, it's probably going to happen a lot. Go, yeah, of course. And why wouldn't it? Or even thereafter, because this power is influence is distributed differently, you can approach people, so many different people, to say after the fact, hey, I've got this initiative. Like, I know some people won't want to be elected at all, but they just kind of want to do their thing too, right? And so I think for people who might be concerned that this is going to be exclusive, I think that's just old thinking, and that's what they're used to. But I don't think this is going to play out that way at all. I really don't.
So much so, I think that's an unbelievable statement until you're there.
Yeah.
I love the idea that, you can be highfalutin, known in the community, whatever, anyone we would name as like number one in the community, maybe short of Dan. And you may end up in a room of 6 people. And if you say, do you know who I am? And 5 people say, no,
No.
who the hell are you? You have no power.
Right.
All you have is the power to influence. You either have good ideas or you don't. It doesn't matter who you are.
That's right.
That's pretty awesome.
Or even if you are known, if if the people in that room don't want to see the thing that you are pitching, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and being known could be a detriment if you're known for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, true.
Right? We're selecting for reputation somewhat here and trust, and all it took was, and that's good in a way, because again, you break trust once, hopefully that should matter. I think there should be like, hopefully people have this sort of one strike thing. That one time you lied, but you still seem like a good dude. Okay, we'll give you a second chance. It's like,
right.
I don't know.
Wasn't that Patrick brought up a good point before you came on, Mike, that I think you'll speaks to a lot of what we're talking about, and is that there's testifying. He was using that word. I think that was important. He's like, listen, when I was on the forums and talked about myself, right, I was testifying. And then I talked to so-and-so on video and I was testifying. And if those are inconsistent, right, that's already going to start to be problematic. But then at the same time, if I'm elected in any way or provided with resources of the community and I don't do these things, it's going to be hard to get away from, I guess, was really like the gist of it, right? Because that authenticity, that consistency, it's going to be really important. And it's going to be so easy, I think, to see in some ways, if someone's not, right?
Yeah. I laugh because one of the so I have a history as a performance coach. I've been personal coaching for, I don't know, almost 20 years now. And the tendency to we make assumptions, snap judgments. We're so fast to assume the worst in so many situations, right? The example many years ago, the first example like this that really struck me was, so your boss comes to your desk and says, could we talk for a minute? And you're freaked out.
Yeah, right. It's almost never.
There's no way.
Yeah. I can't wait
There's
for that
no way
promotion.
he just wants to talk about basketball.
Right.
So it's funny that when in the trial election, this issue with Eve came up, and I think in the board, the last round, none of us had any doubt about Eve's motivation. None of us questioned it for a moment. But afterward, it was like, influence over the election and try to bribe, and like all these words were used that are very high energy, negative words. And it's funny that I hope with transparency, people do learn more, because it's more accessible, to go back and just watch the video, just see, what did Eve say?
Yeah, it's not going to lie.
Like,
it's going to be
prove
there.
to
It's going to be
that
truth.
He's a good guy, not a bad guy. Right?
Exactly.
Right. And
all
that is so
info will
much
be there.
better. I mean, Telegram as an all text, and however it became the social media communication tool of choice of the EOS community, for sure, because that's all I remember from January 2018, but is not good for this stuff. Rumors are so much more powerful than truth, right?
Elon Musk, by the way, has designated it the chat software that will be used on Mars, just to let everyone know.
Seriously?
Telegram?
All right, I was going to say, I'm going to assassinate him.
I'm just thinking, like,
Right
way
now.
in the future, we're still going to have Telegram, and
Oh,
everyone's
Christ,
gonna be like,
please, God, no. Please, God, no. Oh. I mean, it's
It'd
great
be all
for
emoji. There'd be
the
no words, just
instant-
emoji.
And let's face it, what is this really but like make your own chat room? I mean, right? This is AOL chat, it is what it is. But it is that stream, and it's almost impossible sometimes to go back and find out what anyone really said because of the scrolling and just the minutia and the damn sheer energy it would take, after 2,000 messages to try to dig it out. But in our case, there's been that commitment, and we've already, I think, done a great job. I mean, it is all there, even from the first trial election. So that's a great start. But I think that's going to do more good than harm. I think, more often, I think it's going to be used as a redemption, I think, than a condemnation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Certainly,
you know,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
hadn't actually thought about it in these terms, but there was a video put together by this guy Felix. It was a recap of the trial election, which was awesome. And it's actually kind of interesting if proving your point, right? Like let's just use the Eve example. If Eve is like, "Hey guys, my intentions were good. I don't know what you guys are all so freaking out about." It'd be interesting to take that level 2 election and just chop it up and just take, I said this, I said that, I said that, and in probably like 20 seconds of video clips, you could probably like show, this is what I actually said. It's here on IPFS. Here's the timestamps. You could probably put that together like proof,
Yeah,
really
and then
quickly.
someone else could also do the same thing, except cut out all the bit and totally spin another narrative, right? Be like, look, you're a liar. See, look what you said. Deep fake.
Well, I think I was also thinking about, being on camera, right? And knowing that it's all going to be documented. People behave differently. We know that. It's psychology, right? And the tendency to this point has been, well, you want voting to be anonymous so that people don't feel intimidated. And I don't know. I think voting actually allows people to be a little more evil in some ways. I've always, this is personal theory of mine, but in crypto, I've been big proponent of like the people who just are like, anonymity extremists, right? Crypto anarchists at the extreme. No, it's got to be anonymous, because if it isn't, then the powers that be can sort of hunt us down and kill us. And I'm like, actually, an environment that's totally anonymous is far better for criminals than it is for governments to persecute you or whatever you think they're going to do. But an extension of that is, if I can vote for whatever and no one's going to know, I'm going to do whatever. And you just, I think you're more likely to just basically pull shenanigans, maybe, or let's say you got a resentment, put in like a troll vote, right? Hey, nobody's going to know, right? But if it's on camera and it's all documented, you're going to think twice, right? Because this isn't going away. I don't know, it could be good or bad. And who knows? There's probably people right now that have heard of Eden going, no way. I'm not joining that thing. I'm not going to be on video camera talking about whatever. But at the same time, I think it's probably going to tend towards, again, greater accountability, greater honesty. It seems that would be more logical.
Yeah, I agree. It's actually interesting that what you draw out there is this tendency we've seen recently where privacy just brings out the worst, right? We would not, internet trolls, like that's not a thing without privacy.
Right.
Like the level of negativity with that concept, it's not a thing without privacy. It's not a thing without fake accounts.
Yeah, you say, like, you wouldn't say that to me in a bar because I'd punch you in the face. Right? Like you wouldn't, because you'd be afraid of that physical conflict. You'd be afraid of just being called out. Just the person knowing that you did it, right?
And it goes back to what I said before about tribes. Like we grew up in a tribe, and so you can't get away with being an ass if everyone knows each other. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shares that connection. So there's a different layer of accountability and a certain amount of courage, I think, to contributing to this. That I hope we're all giving ourselves a little credit for too, and because that is an experiment and that is a dare, because we're not used to that. But with it, I think comes considerable more voting power than we've ever seen. I think that's one of the really big wins here, to try to explain to people like, not getting elected because you don't get a budget to throw towards whatever you think is the best possible thing is not a bad outcome here. You are exponentially more powerful as a voter than you ever have been before. Before, it was a numbers game that's easily manipulated by money, time, bot armies, whatever, misinformation. But imagine if you could corner like American representatives and they had an hour to give their platform and everything they ever said was documented. I don't know. I just think you might get some totally different outcomes. And every voter has to sit there on camera and go, I'm voting for Mike. I'm voting for Chris. and it's all out there. I don't know. We'll see. That's part of the experiment, right?
And we're used to voter apathy. Like voter apathy is a
Absolutely.
thing, right? It's a huge thing.
Mhm.
But just think about, and I'm going to take the apathetic case here, right? So for anyone who says, I don't know, I think my vote counts, fine. I'm going to deal with the people who don't. There's plenty of them.
Mhm.
Here's that mindset. You go into a little booth on a particular day, you cast a vote that doesn't matter. The decisions are made, you're in the minority, sorry. Well, when that's the mindset, not only do you have bad voter turnout, but you have this incredible civic suppression, right?
Yeah.
You don't experience having civic power.
Mhm.
But when you have a group of 6 people and you're confronted with, well, all I have to do is convince these 6 people.
Mhm.
Are you going to not show up? Like it's not only the barrier to entry, but the chances that you can impact that, right? The
Mhm.
perception of, well, I only have to deal with 6 people. I don't have to deal with 300 whatever million people and cast my single vote, right? It's a pebble in the water, droplet in a pond. How about that? Droplet in a pond.
Mhm.
I destroy analogies. It's kind of what I do. If you're a drop in a pond, that's one thing, but the analogy is going to fall apart even further. But if you're going to go into a group of 6 people, and you know that I'm just going to deal with 5 people, 5 other people, and then if they vote me in or whoever I vote in, they're going to go talk to 5 other people. That is so much more approachable. It's a completely different experience of coordination to start changing the language. No matter, elections aside, national government aside, any group of people coordinating their effort, their behavior, their time, their money to their own ends, right? To the community's own ends. That's so much more approachable. I lived in a HOA of 220 houses. The last thing I wanted to do after going twice was go to an HOA meeting. It's terrible. It's slow. There's whininess and complaints, and the people who show up just to complain once because they already know that they have no power. It's a mess.
Mhm.
But if I knew I just need to talk to 5 neighbors, and if that's
Right.
productive, I'll go talk to 5 more neighbors.
Mhm.
Man, it's so much more approachable.
And the
I-
fact that like the speed, right, of 64 people, and even if we scale it, it won't be longer. It'll just be more groups of it, but 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
4.5 hours starting from kind of scratch is crazy. And I think the other aspect is, even if the person or yourself, if you wanted to be elected or become a representative, even if that outcome doesn't happen, it's pretty much definite that you still change the outcome toward some aspect of your desire, your input, your opinion, right? Because it inevitably had to be compromised to reach the consensus. That's the important part of the consensus, which can be scary. So on the one hand, the idea that there could just be deadlocks and nobody moves forward, but I think more likely we just see compromises, and that's good, right? That's the wisdom of the crowd too, like kind of in a sense chipping away at maybe people holding hardcore beliefs, right? They'll have to kind of go, all right, I got to give a little of that one, I'll give a little of that to get here. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out too. Should we?
Just
How
one
you
more thing
doing,
I want to say
Chris?
that was something that I think is pretty interesting. Like, so is what we're doing in this, where we're not anonymous and we're willing to come on camera. Would this have been possible if this was the Monero community?
No, I don't think
Right?
so. I don't think
I
they
mean,
would
we're
consider
a
it.
community, or even the Bitcoin community. I mean, right? I mean, this is we're
Probably not.
EOS, intent of code type of chain. That in and of itself requires a certain mental disposition potentially.
Mhm.
So it's good thing this is EOS, because it might be dead in the water if it were Bitcoin or Monero or Chain
Probably.
or one of these other
I
ones,
mean,
right?
using our real names, right? I mean, and all that reflects the values, right? I think EOS from the beginning was meant to be, the governance was expected to be an important part of it, and participation and all of that, more than some of these other values from other things. But in the interest of time, I mean, and this has been awesome, but anybody else? Just I mean, I was reading the chat. I didn't think anybody had questions per se, but I got a lot of comments, which is great. Appreciate that, and I hope you guys are getting some back and forth there. That's what this is all about. But Anybody want to jump on and say something? You have the power to unmute. I didn't set it up so that, I was controlling you. So just go ahead. Anyone?
Any thoughts from you, Mike, on that idea of the power of introducing this in our community and how it would have likely failed if it were a different one?
Yeah.
Or not?
Or not?
So, I'm a geek at heart. So I'm not a public figure. I don't want to be. It's not really my thing. So this is all new to me. So I've thought a lot about the alternative, right? What would it take? Use the example of Monero. What would it take for an anonymous community to do this? Well, you have the Sybil problem, right? That's really tough. It doesn't have to be video now, so I guess you could do a Clubhouse, audio format version of the voting. Assuming, I'm just going to put the Sybil issue aside. How do we identify who people are? Are privacy people going to go KYC prior to an election and provide a ID code, right? Maybe some kind of digital identity, sovereign identity approach would be, maybe that's a way to do that, because there are ways now that we're exploring that are starting to work. But some of those are a huge burden to establish. I forget the name of the one I just heard recently, but some of them are really challenging. So you got to know these are real human beings and unique identities. Then how do you vote? Even on a voice call, like, you'd have to think about how something as simple as voting itself, you would need an anonymous account that's also tied to the identity to be able to do a vote and know that everyone voted once. Yeah. Maybe you could get into some zero knowledge proof of that, but although the zero knowledge proof of voting is a pretty well understood thing, how do you connect the proven identity to that?
Right.
It's a really, really hard.
That's a shit show.
Yeah.
God, wow.
You
start looking at it that way. It's like, God dang.
You kind of have to go all the way down to the end and like solve it all and make it super crypto
before you even try. Yeah.
And as I was asked recently about ZK proofs, they're fascinating because so far, how does the banking system work? Trust us. How does the financial system generally work? Trust us. How does the government trust us? Trust us. And we joke about, just trust it all. Well, how does ZK proofs work? You're just trusting other people. Like, there's this, we're talking about mass goblins, I think is the term we used. This is just crypto magic that a few people really understand. A few more can explain it. And that gets access to some people who are willing to watch some YouTube videos to understand kind of hand-wavily how it works. But, at what point do you get pulled over in a car, pulled over by a police officer, and he says, "May I see your ZK proof?" And you provide proof that you're of driving age, you are registered to drive, and you have your car is registered, and he's just supposed to you tap your phone to his little device or whatever, and it goes ping green, and he goes, "Okay, sir," and he knows nothing about you. Like, are we really going to get there?
No.
Yeah, no.
I don't know.
It's going to feel very foreign and unnatural. It's a very unhuman way. Again, I like that this is bringing us back to community, getting to know each other deliberately. Like, that's the opposite direction, I think, that society should be going.
Well, let's go back to Elon Musk. Let's go full on AI cybernet, Skynet.
Skynet, yeah.
When all you've solved is the Sybil problem, and you can do an anonymous vote. Well, what happens when you swap the human with an AI that can actually pass the Turing test and participate in an organization? How do we ever know? Well, what's the test for that? Like, I can't even imagine.
Well, and isn't there, though, stepping back to, because I don't know, I guess I think of a lot of stuff this way from the kind of psychology point of view, but I don't think people in the anonymity religion, I'll call it, realize that they're almost like, when you're thinking that way, it's like you've lost before you've even begun, because you've assumed you can't assert your will without either present or future repercussion by this force this negative power in the world, whether it's a government or someone else that you right. So you're kind of saying like, I don't feel confident enough just sitting up and saying, hi, I'm Dominic Thomas, and I really think we should elect Mike. I don't know. There's something about the anonymity thing that's saying like you lost before you've begun in a way. You've given up this whole thing to say, I can't do that. I've got to jump through all these hoops. We have to do all these things. We have to make all of these compromises just to get to step one, because we're afraid basically of being on the record, right? What does that say about your belief of where you are? Like you're conceding almost to 1984 in a sense, right? You've just assumed that's there and you don't want to be on the record because 2 + 2 = 5.
Right.
Fuck that. I don't know. Just straight up. Like, no. This is empowering to me. Eden's about, I'm here. I deserve a shot. And so do you. And we respect each other in that way. And we make the assumption that it's okay. Like, it's okay for us to be and say and do whatever it is we're going to do, because we're going to do it together. And we are more powerful together, because that is right. What's really the ultimate thing that would ever defend you from some malevolent force, right? Numbers. Numbers at the end of the day. If the United States government wanted to turn on its people into martial law and put our soldiers in the streets, I think we know damn right well that if one of us goes running at them, we're getting shot. But if 100,000 of us arm in arm start walking down the streets going, guys, stop, they're not going to shoot you,
Yeah. Well,
whereas anonymous
run out of
people
bullets.
hanging out in their basements, trying to not be known, I don't know. Well, you've already given up. And to me, you've already gave up your power. Yeah, something to think about.
And there is an in between that I think we've lost quite a bit of culturally, that maybe this brings back. There's the world and the global presence and national governments, and that's way out there and huge and maybe worth hiding from. I'm not even going to take a stance on that. But there's also, if you're in a community of 1,500 people and you're hiding in your basement trying to be anonymous, I think you're missing something.
Yeah.
And I'm not a saint about that, right? Like I'm guilty of this as well. Like, how many of us really know our neighbors? How many know many neighbors, right? How many neighborhoods have regular block parties so that you recognize most of the people there numerous times throughout the year? You could do that.
If they did happen, they're not happening now. Like,
Well,
right?
sure,
COVID has shot those all to shit.
Right, but what you're saying in that instance too is that's what I mean. Like, you're already giving up so much. It's sort of like the concept of, if you never want there to be a terrorist incident on an airplane, you just make everybody spend the night at the airport the night before, and you put everybody through extensive, strip searches and, questioning and waterboarding or whatever the hell you do. But do you want to even fly anymore? It's not worth it, right? So that's what I mean. There's this existential risk to me that the anonymous patrons are, I think, first of all, making a lot bigger than it is, and then not realizing how much they give up in this effort to protect themselves from this existential thing. I don't know. It's just a lot. Anyway, yeah, I don't know.
I see value in both. Like, I love the anonymous thing. I mean, honestly, it's like there's an aspect of it I love that stuff. But I completely know what you're saying, and I do think this is a completely different approach, and I massively value community.
I think it has its use cases, right? It's like anything. I mean,
yeah.
I'm kind of very for, to some degree, the anonymity of money, because I think that is very powerful. That's different. That's the difference between basically an entity being able to seize our resources and our assets easily. That's not a good thing. That's tough. That's a tough situation that all of us are potentially in at any given time. And we know it's happened, right? Governments have seized gold from their residents, and not just ones we consider, despotic outliers, like, good democratic governments, so to speak, have done some evil shit with all that. They've seized people's assets and resources, and then we know just the manipulation of money, and the way it's done. And a lot of us are here for that reason, that, we believe in sound money, if you will. So applied appropriately, right? But I think when you're talking about voting and distribution of power, it starts to fall down, because a lot of the power is in the bonds, like you're saying. It's in the community. It's in what we saw in the election, right? The hour that people spent. People said networking. That was a big thing. What was one of the best things out of the election? Networking. Wow, I'd never met these people, and now I feel like I know them. I feel like I can reach out to, Lenny, because he was in my group now, and I know him. I can ask him things, or we could do business together, or whatever. Right? That's powerful.
This is another great. You come to another really solid point, Dominic. This. I'll say it the really pessimistic way. I've said this in the past. On the internet, you can come up with any crazy fetish, interest, like weird thing, and the internet will connect you with all of your weird brethren, right? So it doesn't matter what you like, you can find your community. This is kind of the positive, version of that. This particular community with just 65 people was so cool to get in a room with 3 other people and generally have at least the important stuff in common. I'm sure our interests were different, and our countries were different, and like there was stuff that was different, but we were all there for something cool. We were all there to coordinate. We were all there to experiment, to try this thing out. We were all there with the background of crypto, whatever that meant to each of us. So it was a really cool networking opportunity. And I've talked to, I'd say, about half the people that I met in the first trial. I'm still in some form of communication with.
Yeah.
It's kind of on my list to reach out to the others. Like that's
I had been reading some of Chris's stuff before, thought he was just a nutcase, and then now we're like doing stuff
and
together.
Now I know in person.
I know he's total
Totally
nutcase,
crazy.
but he's like my
Super
kind of
nuts.
nutcase. So, well, I think it speaks to my theory all along, and then I want to just shut up and let's see if Josh or anybody else wants to say something. And I gotta go make sure my kids are fed. But people are not really that different when it comes down to the core. We want the same things for the most part, right? We want the opportunity to thrive. We want the opportunity to be heard, to have some input, right, into the processes of our lives, into the decisions that really matter. We want to know those people. We want to know them. Ideally, we don't ever get to know our candidates. They're polished. They're fucking caricatures, right? Nobody knows Trump. They think they do, and they can make opinions, and everybody got all battle hardened, and now they hate each other. But you don't know him. He has not shown you who the hell he is at all. You don't know him. You don't know Biden. You don't know any of these people. They are crafted, right? And you are on the outside, my friend. You don't know any of them. But in this instance, go for the candidate or not, you learn something about them. You know something about them. And that's important.
And imagine after we keep having elections after elections. So
right.
Randomized groups, you're going to meet new people every time. Maybe we want to have more elections every month. This is fun.
And to Patrick's point, though, too, because someone could say to me, okay, yeah, you know them, but they lied to you, so you don't know shit. Okay, well, they better keep it up, because they're going to have to keep that lie up. And I guess, I don't know if you say it enough, right? Isn't that really who you are? Maybe some adage there.
Well, that's the problem with lies. Because you can't keep it up. Eventually the truth percolates through, and you're like, oh wait, that's not at all what I said before.
It's not going to work.
Someone else will notice, right? They're the ones who catch you on it because they realize that you're full of shit. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're coming here. We're trying to, but this has been awesome. Way better than I expected for the first one. I don't know about you, Chris, but Josh, why don't you get your camera on? Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to pose a question to you guys. So
Absolutely.
we've got the upcoming election, July 17th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, what would each of you suggest, or what's your insider perspective on what can be done to make the best use of the time between now and the election to kind of get the most out of the election? Collectively, depending on what your objective is individually. I would just like each of you to chime in on that if you're up for it.
Yeah, I think that's good. Go ahead. Start us
Okay.
off, Mike. What do you think?
Yeah, Mike, you go first.
Are we hoping to accomplish? Because you've got a certain perspective too. It's kind of a big part of the software development side of it.
Write software as fast as we can. It's interesting. I don't know that I have anything useful to contribute to that. I think my experience of the process was, I'd say only one thing comes to mind really, and Chris can speak to this more. It's actually what really stood out in that last round. Chris came with, we want a short-term win. I suggest we do a short-term practical win, and here's what I think it should be. And that stood out. Up to that point, the entire nature of the conversation in my first two rounds was we should spend this money on educating people about Eden. And everybody was in alignment, but it was a soft goal. And so when the time came to say, well, okay, what does that mean? None of us really had an answer. We were like, oh, we'll figure that out later.
Right.
Whereas Chris came with, definitive goal. Now, do you need that? I don't know. The trial elections are very different than, they're very short term, right? They're very time confined, where an ongoing election would never be that way. So that's probably a good move. And there's a certain aspect to the EOS community that we want to see things improve. We want to see things move and be known for stuff's moving and getting better. So I think that was a very powerful message. But I also think if you craft that platform too sharply and you come attached to that, every meeting I got in, why did I win, right? What did I tell you my platform was? My platform was expect not to win. People came in with their idea. Here, I think we should do this. Here's my story. Here's my thing. And it was very compelling. None of them won. I don't know what that's about, but if you come in too hard and you're attached to your way, you're not listening to other people, maybe. Like there's something missing. Whereas if you just show up with you and your good ideas and your background, you're kind of going to be a fit or not, I think.
There's something weird about that, right? You're kind of not reaching consensus in a way when you just accept somebody else's idea at face value and just vouch for it. I mean, you're validating it, but you're not a part of it. And maybe that's it, right? Well, so much of what we've been talking about, you don't own any of it, right? There's no ownership for you, nothing. You didn't get to talk about it really in that instance. It was probably just a yes-no discussion in a way. Like you might ask a question or two and that person's going to have an answer and that's that. It's not, well, what about this? That might be part of it. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
I've been thinking lots about it for sure. And I am thinking that, so there's two ways you approach this, right? You enter an election because you want to win. So then it's a bit of ego involved, surely. And so then it's why do you want to win? What are you representing? So if it's some sort of proprietary thing that only you have the skills for and you've got the background and you built the team and it's really predicated and needs to be you, okay, that's one way to do it. Or you could just have a good idea. And so if you can separate the idea from you, like it's almost like we did in the last round, right? Like we're with the Eves and the money. It was Eves putting that extra money up for you, John, the person, or you, John, the idea you stood for. And that's that difference sort of led to how it ended up in a way because we didn't quite know that nuance. So I would think in leading up to this election, if you have an idea that generally is a good idea, and so this is what I'm going to be doing. Like I think we should have an Eden proxy, but I don't need to be the guy. I'm going to put a post up. I'll do it in the next week or so of what I think this could look like. And anybody else who think that is a good idea, run on it. It doesn't need to be me, Chris Barnes, my idea. I run on it.
Right.
It's like, here's an idea. Anybody can take that idea and run with that idea and tweak it or whatever. But then you could have multiple people running on the same idea, but they're not even tied. They're not even talking. They don't even have to really even know each other, but they could still run for the same concept and see where they end up. And then maybe if it's a good enough idea and enough people are like, yeah, I'm gonna run for that as well. And then that gives the idea a better chance of actually coming to fruition, because then you could have multiple people who are actually pushing for the same cause. And then you're just picking who amongst this group is going to be the best to champion that idea. But I think that's, so if you have ideas, decide if it needs to be you and you alone, and then of course run with that. But if you have an idea that's just a generically good idea, present it. I mean, sure, if you need credit, I'm sure people will give it, but generally, share these ideas, right? This is a communal, we want what's best for the community, we want to enrich and grow the EOS community through Eden. Then we should almost be willing to separate our ego from our ideas and just present the idea and hope it carries and wins the day if it's that good.
I think to some degree, unless I misunderstood a little, Josh, and not that, I mean, I think both of you guys are components of the answer, but were you also asking in a sense, like, what do we hope to accomplish? Like, what are some of the goals and purpose of this next election?
No, I guess I was more so thinking about, I'm starting to get the sense that a lot of the legwork for consensus may be what happens leading up to an
Okay.
election.
Okay.
Especially given that you only have so much time. So if you really want to campaign for something, if you really want to know what the community cares about, what the problems are that need solving, it seems like a lot of that should pretty much be figured out before you enter an election. Otherwise, it's like we're doing like a think-a-thon or a hackathon type of thing.
Right.
Which maybe we should do some of those kind of things. And it is, maybe the elections will be a little bit of that to some degree, but I don't know. That's just one thing I'm starting to sense. And so I'm wondering what's really, definitely campaigning to get more people in the election for this one sounds like a priority. That's something I'll try to see what I can do to help with that, including just being available for witnessing, some of these inductions and the scheduling process. It'd be nice if we could somehow work out some of the kinks with lining up people's times and all of that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I can say, because I'm very much, I think about the elections from advancing the outcomes, or advancing the potential outcome of the elections, whether it be improvement in the process or efficiency, or finding better and newer ways to do something. So I'm looking at it as a very much an experiment, but with a sense of purpose along the way. And so I thought of this, when Dan asked me to run it again, was, well, we want more people because we need a bigger test size, because that's important, because it's a lot different what will work best with 64 versus 640 and so forth. But we also need to grow the community. And the people that are most likely to show up and help us test this thing are probably people that are in the community. So two and two together, I'm always trying to be efficient. I'm focusing on kind of membership drive, in a sense, to then have more people in the election when that time comes. I figure if the Eden community is 500 people in 5 weeks, which is possible. Remember, this community is going to grow exponentially. Typically, that's how these types of word of mouth induction, right? Because there's 66 people now that can invite someone, whereas there were 20 people not long ago, a couple weeks ago, right? There's going to be 166 people who could potentially invite somebody or bear witness, right, Josh? And I think that is part of it in the early stage, that there's only so many people available to do it. So that's a big part of this, is grow the community, learn more about how to hold elections. Let's get some expectations though too. There's not, I'd say, Mike, am I safe and say there's not going to be software used in this one yet, because we just don't want to put that on the team. It's going to be tough, and I've even talked to Brandon about it, because it's a kind of all or none thing in a way, because we're going to have non-members still participating. According to Brandon, that'd be a real bitch if we tried to use our software, because it's going to be really integrated with the portal. So let's just maybe set those expectations. We're still going to be probably manually doing things, but the eye to those processes is going to be about how to inform the Clarion dev team to eventually build us out our own election software. And then the other thing, is to this is starting to be, these are substantial. I mean, 2,000 EOS for the top person, but then 100 something, people having probably around, say, anywhere from 11 to 14 in the early rounds. We want to start also testing that hive mind, right? Does this really work? Because we're not one of the things to speak to. We're set on the fact that the way this process is going to work is that each level is going to receive some portion of a budget, no matter what we do. But it's not set how much, right? Does it work better to place more at the bottom, and a little less as we get higher? Do we distribute 75% of the budget pool in rounds 1 and 2, and then only 25% in round 3? We don't know that answer yet, at least as far as the conversation I've had with Dan. So these are other things we're it's the first time we'll have multiple layers. So those are some of the things, and getting everyone's feedback on that is the other thing that it really does help. And I know it can be a pain in the ass to have this form afterwards, and maybe you just forget about it, but please, if you can remember, that's my other ploy, because part of my mission here is to be able to give back good information to Mike and the Clarion team and Dan and all of you, even, so I've got information coming soon as well that's going to get published for everyone to see. It's never going to be about, asymmetrical information. That's for damn sure.
Let me, if I could give another answer to Josh. I'm late for a meeting I'm going to run to, so I just wanted to share this thought before I bail. One of the things I think I'm finding as we deal with usability, right? As we deal with, okay, fine, we're running on EOS now, but in my round 1, we had someone who was 2 weeks into crypto, read the book and sorted out crypto to participate. Like that's where she was. And that's awesome. And I've helped lots of family and friends get on board with crypto, and it was just Skype call. Where are my keys? How do I get this on my phone? Like, just because it's just all crazy foreign to somebody not in it already. So as we deal with usability, where Dan wants usability solved, like we want a good UX for EOS, right? This isn't even just like, yeah, sure, let's do it on Eden, but it's about solving the UX for EOS. I think there are people out there in the community who have solved major problems, right? So we've taken huge leaps, and what I'm about to say does not diminish those big leaps taken, but there's still gaps. And I think if you identify the gaps in UX, the gaps in education, and you can say, I think the biggest problem in EOS is this, or these 3 things. I would fund any of these 3 things. And you can come with one of those gaps, especially if you think you can address it effectively with the amount of money available, right? We boosted John Boyd with the trial action number 1 money, and man, he had something implemented in just no time, like cool to Telegram power up. There are going to be little things like that, and the Spanish speaking community in particular, that's kind of what I'm tuned into a little more. Just loved it. I mean, just jumped on it immediately. He had 400 something usages in like the first few hours. So I think little things like that where you say, if we had this, but it did it this way, or we had this other tool or a spec, a standard for this wallet thing or whatever, there may be small gap fills that would be so valuable that when you speak them, a lot of people will say, yes, that would materially impact usability. That could be an approach. All right, guys. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's a
Thanks,
really awesome
Mike.
Conversation. I'll
that was great.
later.
Great having you, Mike. Thanks for coming.
Worked out great.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. And I guess, we're going to wrap this up to 2 hours, but it's been awesome. So, Chris and I are going to go with it and see what these things end up. But I guess worth saying, please, Saturday, what do you say? I got the time wrong, but you fixed it in the post.
It's like midnight UTC, 8 p.m. Eastern. I mean,
okay.
It's selfishly around a time that I want it.
Yeah, we're doing our best to to work around things to make these happen. But the next one is Saturday. What is that? Is that 0 on the 24-hour then?
It is, yeah. That's why it's
0
weird.
UTC.
It's 0 UTC.
We're gonna have a kind of a webinar format. So it's like the third format. We're checking out 3 different formats here. If you haven't seen the theme, and that's kind of part of what's our thinking and strategy was. Let's see what works, and we may do 2 of one. If another one sucks or whatever, expand these and go from here. But it's going to be webinar informative. We'll get you a little more information, and then for next week we're going to have a little more pre-scheduling here. Actually, we just sort of put these together near the end of last week, so we're kind of working on the fly. But we'll have a little more stuff posted in advance to let you know what you might want to tune into live and what you might want to just watch later or ignore. But the webinar on Saturday, will be something pretty informative. I don't think we nailed it down. We have a few ideas.
No, we do. Yeah, no, with John Williamson.
Oh, there you go. I'm sorry.
So he's a member of the Eden community. He's agreed. He gave a presentation, I think already, that's about governance related and just blockchain governance. And just so I think he's going to spend 30 minutes roughly to do that for us and just be education based, and then we can hang around. I'm gonna have a beer too. Like I made it late for me, so I can have a beer. So again, selfish. But,
so it's casual to hang out.
It's meant to be a hangout mixed with some education.
A salon, if you will.
There we go. That's right. Very relaxed. I'll be wearing my pajama pants.
Yeah. Imagine you're at Chris's house, scotch, cigars, or to your liking, wine, whatever.
One of those. 100%. Yeah.
There you go.
And yeah, definitely people, if you've got some suggestions and you want to hear more or less of something,
please
tell us. We've got thick skin. It won't hurt our feelings.
Nope, not at all.
That's right.
All right. Signing off.
Thank you.
First Eden podcast. Thank you guys. Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
And